Morning to everybody. I see mainly Danes on the line, but I think there's a few more English speakers joining. Today's topic will be on waste management as an export opportunity in Africa. Before we dive in, I thought it could be nice for you to hear a bit about what we're doing as Danish industry in Africa. You may know that in Danish industry, we have offices around the world where we support our 19,000 members. I myself came from our office in New York that I was leading, which is called Danish Clean Tech Hub, where we only focus on supporting members on clean tech export into the American market, and so forth in the other growth markets, as we call them, such as India, China, Germany, etc. We have a presence, which is highly appreciated by our members as we help them with market entry. For Africa, we are not an export office per se. We are more in this first stage a capacity building unit because we realize that this is a complex market, and as the members of A2 or Access to Innovation know, Africa is not in any way an easy market to go into. So we decided for this setup of our permanent office in East Africa, first of all, we said, okay, we'll focus, we should have a regional hub. It makes sense to place it in Kenya, which is the growth engine of East Africa. And secondly, we said, we don't think we should be focusing too much on export projects to begin with. I know that often the members of Access to Innovation, you'll participate in Industriens Fondsprojekter, EU calls, etc. For export promotion. We will be doing that in a later stage from our office, but for right now, we are basically here on a Danida funding. We run what's called the Labor Market Consortium, together with 3F, the largest trade union in Denmark, and also the Danish Trade Union Development Agency, who also have offices around the world to support trade unionists and workers. And why do we have that? Well, we have that because what we're bringing to the market as capacity building is the Danish labor market model. And for that, you need to walk the talk. We feel you do need to bring the actual stakeholders into the market with you. So that's why we created this labor market consortium. And what we do in East Africa, so we're a leader in 5 countries from my office based in Nairobi. We go in and train both what we call our sister organizations, so fellow business member organizations in East Africa. In Kenya, that would be Kenya Association of Manufacturers. In Uganda, it would be Uganda Manufacturing Association. In Tanzania, it would be Confederation of Tanzania Industries. And in Ethiopia, it's the Chamber of Commerce, and so forth. And we train them from a trainer-trainer approach. So we train both their secretariats and also their membership. Lately, we've done a lot of training in sustainability and sustainable development goals, because that's what they are demanding. So we train them in what's in demand and what they'd like to hear about from a knowledge sharing perspective from Denmark. So everything we do is tailored to what the organizations need, whether it's trade unions or business member organizations. And we've done this for 20 years, so we're not new to this, but it's only for the past 2 years we've had a permanent office here in Nairobi that I lead. I hope that served as a good intro. I think at this point, I would like to ask Thomas just to play a video so we can visualize what's happening on the ground within waste management in a country like Kenya to kind of set the scene. So back to you, Thomas.
Lav, kan du være sidde og mute dig?
Fik I lyden med på den? Did you get the sound as well?
I don't think so, but we had the subtitles, so that will have to do.
Okay. Sorry about that.
All right, but I hope this served as a good scene setter. So can you see my screen now?
Yes, we do.
Okay, great. So a bit of background. Of course, this is mainly about plastics in this video. And for us, this is something we started supporting through our Danida program back in 2018, where we invited a Kenyan delegation to Denmark to look into take-back schemes, circular economy, and plastics EPR schemes. For us, this is much more about preventing pollution. This is about resource management. It's about creating jobs in the informal sector, because what we're now seeing is that if we organize this right, there'll be a massive job creation potential, from the waste pickers in the streets and in the slums to recycling companies to remanufacturers. So this is actually a burgeoning industry we are seeing with a massive potential for poverty alleviation also in Kenya and East Africa in general. So it has many aspects, this case of waste management. And of course, there's the innovation aspects, because what we'll be talking about today is also how can Access to Innovation members and Danish companies play into this and see it as an export opportunity, because there will need to happen a lot of innovation if we are to recycle, remanufacture different waste streams into new products in this market. And that's something where we have an edge from Denmark, because we've been doing this for quite some time. So where we are right now in Denmark is that already in 2019, so that's only a year after we had our delegation to Denmark, the Plastics Action Plan was launched here in Kenya, which sets out a national plan for how to handle waste management within plastics. And that's across, I think, up to 9 types of plastics, so not only PET, so it's quite multifaceted. Then in 21, we saw the establishment of what is called the Kenya Producer Responsibility Organization. So that's the first of its kind in Africa, and that's a full PRO organization to handle all types of plastics and now also packaging. And just to be clear, what is a PRO? A PRO is an organization that's independent, and the business case inherent in it that the big brand owners, such as, let's say, Coca-Cola, Unilever, that dump or circulate a lot of plastic on the market, they have to pay a fee into this PRO. That money is being received, and that can then be issued as subsidies to plastic recyclers that help recirculate all the plastic into the market and remanufacture new products. So it's kind of it's a bit of a Robin Hood mechanism, if you like. So that's what's now been established last year in Kenya, up and running. It currently has around 200 members within the plastics industry in Kenya. But what we're looking to happen in Kenya is the passing of a big national waste bill. We now think it's going to happen after the elections, the presidential elections. That's going to happen here in August. But what it will bring to the market is 4 new PROs, so producer responsibility organizations, to cover areas such as electronic waste, automotive, and hazardous waste. So now we are seeing an explosion of these PROs to handle all types of waste streams, right? And that just opens up the market even more. In parallel to that, as part of our project that we're running, as DI with our fellow BMOs in East Africa, we'll see the launch of a PETCO in Tanzania this year. So that's a PET organization to set up a take-back scheme also in Tanzania. So they're starting with PET, which is where most companies, they tend to start. At the same time, in Uganda, we are funding a national mapping to look into what is the scope of the problem with plastic pollution, what's the potential volume we can collect in Uganda, and how many recyclers are actually represented in Uganda. So this type of mapping we also did in Kenya back in 18 and 19 as a step 1. We are now replicating this. So for us, it's an exercise in replication and scale up what we're doing. And the same for Ethiopia, where we are funding a mapping of plastic pollution, and also recyclers in the capital area of Addis next year. Coming into next year, we think we'll then see the launch of these 4 new producer responsibility organizations in Kenya. So Kenya is very much the front runner in the region, but we are hoping that by replicating the models, we can see the other countries catch up quite quickly. So we may see the beginning of an EAC market for waste management. Why should we frame this as an export opportunity from the Danish side? Well, in Denmark, we have a very good reputation within circular economy, and we are global front runners here. I think it's worth mentioning that Denmark was the first country where the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, which is the organization within circular economy globally, they chose Denmark as the first country to do a full country study within circular economy back in 2015 already. And by now, we see that circular economy business models is becoming mainstream in Denmark, right? And it's at industry level, it's at SME level, at multinational level. It's very much becoming mainstream, also at consumer level. And maybe when we talk circular economy, what does it mean to have a circular business model? If you look at the figure in the middle, I mean, here are 5 models for circular economy, if you like. One is to look into how can you create a product where you can extend the lifetime? It could be a cell phone, for example. So a lot of it is about the quality of the material you choose. In the second business model, we can talk recycling of waste. That is, if you determine that if the first product is no longer viable or has a secondary lifetime, for example, then we talk about taking the product apart and recycling the individual units. So that's the recycling of waste. Then there's product as a service, also becoming very popular these days. You know it from ride-sharing services such as Uber and Bolt, etc. I was just in Copenhagen a couple of weeks ago with Donkey Republic, almost taking over the streets. So that's a ride-sharing model for bicycling, for example. So these business models are also becoming very popular now they're coming to the market in East Africa. We can see that now. Then there's the whole sharing business model concept where you actually bring a service or product out to many users at the same time using ICT solutions. Finally, I'd like to mention what we call circular bio-based business models. That's when we extract or substitute oil-based products with bio-based products. An example could be from the sugar sector down here, where the waste from the sugar cane can be used to produce paper, for example. And we have a multitude of models from our region up north in Denmark, right? So we see more and more the bio-based solutions also coming to the market, where Denmark has an edge because we have been doing this for quite some time. So to sum up in a way, you can say that what we think Denmark has as a stronghold that we can export would be expertise in circular economy, our design expertise, digitalization, I'll get back to that. Innovation, Denmark has a strong edge within innovation at many levels. It's technology and machinery. And then it's our approach to cross-sector collaboration, so between academia, industry, government. And then it's the consumer awareness, because we are living in a society in Denmark where the consumers, they care about circular economy and how products are being produced. So I think that could serve to say this is the backdrop for why this could be framed as an export opportunity from the Danish side, because we are global front runners. I'll talk about 3 verticals, market verticals, where there's an export potential from the Danish side. The first one is plastics and packaging, where we also had the video, right? So we've been fortunate enough that we've been using the Danish Plastics Federation as a technical expert in our work down here to provide input, to share knowledge, and also simply try and copy what's already being done in Denmark, right? Because there's no need to reinvent the wheel. What they did recently was to issue, it's a couple of years ago, I think, to issue design guidelines that can apply to all plastics and packaging players in the industry. And this was done in a consultative, in a collective way, being supported by a lot of really sharp companies in Denmark, as you can see here, across many sectors. And I think we can share the design guidelines after this if you're not familiar with them. But what they serve to do in a way is to look into your business model. You need to focus on what is, first of all, the vision behind the product, and you have to think about what is. If you're in packaging, the first decision you need to make from a strategic perspective is what kind of material are you using, what's the quality of the material, and that plays a huge part in with the product you bring into the market if you want to have a circular business model that I referenced before. And design matters a lot. I think there's a lot of talk in Europe right now on design for disassembly, that every product should be able to take them apart, right? So they can be reassembled in a new fashion. And that goes within construction, it goes within infrastructure, it goes within many sectors of industry, right? So those are some of the aspects that the design guidelines, they capture, that you need to have in mind if you work, in this case, within plastics and packaging, and where there's a big know-how among Danish companies that we think can be brought into this new market we see in East Africa for waste management. Yes. Maybe I'll just pause there. If there any questions to this market vertical of plastics and packaging before I move to the next vertical?
I think we just keep going and then we wait for the questions to the end.
Okay. Just as an additional note to this one, I think it's worth mentioning that we don't have a plastics PRO in Denmark yet, but next year there's a packaging PRO coming where Danish industry will be hosting the secretariat for that. So this is also a case where we're seeing East African countries taking over Denmark in a way, because now we've already have a plastics PRO in Kenya, which is very interesting. Okay, but then I'll look into the next one, next market vertical, that is electronic waste or e-waste. E-waste is now also coming into the Kenyan market with this waste bill being passed. And in Denmark, we have quite a bit of experience with this field, because we've actually had a PRO within e-waste since 2005 already that we call Elretur. So there's been a lot of knowledge accumulated in this organization. And you can say, what's the nature of our e-waste PRO? I mean, it is to support the industry in doing safe and productive recycling of electronic waste. And Elretur in itself is handling around 80% of electronics and batteries that are being brought to Danish recycling facilities around the countries. So it's quite a bigger volume that they handle, and that their members they handle. And they have a large membership. We're talking 900 companies in Denmark that are members of Elretur. So also quite a number of companies that are already looking what could be export opportunities within the knowledge we've accumulated already within Elretur, right? And I'd like to just stress maybe one use case. If we look into the automotive, the car industry, right? In Denmark right now, the recycling rate of cars is around 95%, which is quite high. As we speak, there's almost zero recycling happening in the car industry in Kenya, but the potential is massive. If you look at the Kenyan market, East Africa in general, this is generally a place where you import cars into it, but cars, they don't tend to leave this region, and they will drive them until the very last mile can be sucked out of them, and then they end up in a landfill most likely. So the potential is quite big to set up an e-waste PRO in the different countries in East Africa, and where Denmark really has a very high level of knowledge and technology that can be brought to this market. We visited Stena Recycling. I think it's the largest recycling company in Denmark recently, with a delegation from East Africa. huge interest into the technology that's been applied at the recycling sites, and also the level of granularity that you can now sort electronic waste into. These days, Denmark is mainly exporting recycled aluminum pellets into the German and the Turkish market, and that's a cash cow. So we are talking about the new gold when you can recycle electronic waste such as aluminum, for example, and chips, electronic chips, etc. So again, this is a use case and a market where we have a huge edge from the Danish side that we think could become a very good business case for export into East Africa, where this is taking off now. The last market vertical I'd like to focus on is digitalization, ICT. You may ask, why is this relevant for waste management and circular economy? Well, without a digitalization approach to this, we're not going to see any business models basically succeed, because one is having a digitized economy, but what we've managed to do in Denmark within digitalization and waste management is that we are now seeing systems where there's a high level of traceability. We can now trace the lifetime or the multiple lifetimes of products over time because of chips and barcodes we insert into the products, which is key for a circular economy. We can also handle payment transaction in the informal economy and the formal economy in a much smarter way. We have a new level of quality we we can apply through ICT approach. So this is really the backbone of a circular economy, is what we can do from a digitalization perspective. We were just in Denmark a month ago where we saw the signing of an agreement between Cbrain. You may know Cbrain as the software that any ministry in Denmark run on, which is true, but they're much more than that. And they've definitely an example of a company that's grabbed this opportunity within waste management, not only in Kenya, but around the world, to say that, okay, we actually have a unique software that can help set up the digital infrastructure to handle these big producer responsibility organizations we now see shooting up, because there has to be a high level of compliance when you talk waste management and reuse of products, because the local authorities, of course, they need proof that a given amount of plastics, for example, indeed has been collected in a rural area. So there's a huge focus from the government side on compliance and monitoring. So for that purpose, you need a very strong digital infrastructure running behind these producer responsibility organizations to handle the enormous amount of data that's part of these business models. So we saw the signing of that contract a month ago, and Cbrain, they'll be assisting KEPRO, so the Kenya Producer Responsibility Organization, in setting up this digital infrastructure that's needed to handle. We think when the waste bill is being passed, we could see up to 3,000 companies being mandated to sign up to this packaging PRO in Kenya. So quite a bit, you can imagine the amount of data that needs to be handled when 3,000 companies have to be onboarded onto a platform. So I think that was an important use case within digitalization that hopefully that serves as a good example of why digitalization is key for waste management, and when we think Denmark has, again, a big edge we can bring into this East African market. I'll wrap up here and hand it over to you, Thomas, for Q&A. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for this very interesting presentation. I think we got a good kind of insight into all the initiatives that are going on and the potential possibilities for Danish companies to tap into this. Perhaps if you unshare your...
Yeah.
Okay, so the floor is now open for questions. You can either post them in the chat, or you can just raise your digital hand, or you just shout out loud. Your choice. But let me just, I actually had one question that I was pondering about. So if we look at it from a kind of a competitive point of view, I guess one part of this circular economy is that you recycle materials. But another trend that we also see is that there's a lot of new innovation in terms of degradable materials. for example, within alternatives to conventional plastic products, you have degradable materials. How do you see the trend in these two kind of competitive approaches?
It's true. Yeah, we also see a trend into bio-based design, as I mentioned down here, but it's very, very early days, right? If we are to solve the plastic pollution problem, we do have to start on the recycling side to get material out of the landfills. That is the biggest challenge down here. So we, from a needs perspective, looking at the pyramid, right? We will see probably those business models coming in a bit later, but there's a much bigger challenge we need to look at first, and that also comes with a big export potential from the Danish side.
Okay. Please go ahead if you have any questions. If not, then I'll just continue.
I see Mike has a question.
Okay, Mike, please.
Long time no see.
Oh, hi, Mike.
Sorry, I got the link a bit late, so I kind of missed the first 15 minutes or so, but I caught the second half. So if I'm asking a silly question that you already answered in the first 15 minutes, I apologize. But good to see you again. I'm just wondering, I mean, there is in the initiatives that that you've presented. It's good to see a lot of the different partners working in the kind of the value chain of waste and working on the sort of the putting in place the recycling actions. But in terms of addressing the kind of the collection challenge and actually, you know, bringing the waste, which is, you know, that we know is often can be sort of spread, you know, quite broadly in different communities. You know, we looked at when we were in Kenya in the river system, in different places where it might get dumped or left. Has there been any breakthroughs in how that is being done and how things are being actually collected in a more effective way to get them to the places they need to go to get recycled?
Yeah, thanks for that. And no, we haven't covered that. So good you asked, Mike. This is when we talk about the digital infrastructure. This is what the problem that you're talking about also, because if we're not able to present the business case and put a value on waste, we're not going to get anywhere. So what we're looking into now is a collaboration with Safaricom, so we can now add the KEPRO to use M-Pesa, so that an informal waste picker out in rural areas of Kenya on the coast, for example, in Kwale, can go in and pick, let's say 10 kg of plastic, bring it to a recycler and get payment on site. That way we can attract a lot of informal workers into this, right? If we can't prove that business case, then I don't think we're going to get very far. So that's what we're looking at right now, and what KEPRO is looking into with Safaricom. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Please just speak up because I can't see all the hands here if you have questions. In the meantime, I have one. When we look at these circular systems, and whenever these operate in a kind of a B2B setting, let's say a supplier of plastic bottles to Coca-Cola, and then Coca-Cola on the demand side, where do you see kind of the biggest push from the demand side or from the supply side? Can you?
Yeah, that's always the key issue of setting up a PRO. Who's paying, right? Who's paying for what? Is the push coming from government or industry? So that's the oldest conflict of time between industry and government. And in this case, for Kenya, it was very much a private sector driven process where they, in a way, twisted the arms of the big players of Coca-Cola and Unilever, and to say that if you're serious about sustainability, you need to pay into such an independent body, right, to walk the talk about sustainability. So I think that's what worked. And then, of course, government also came on board because they have national targets for climate action in every country down here as well. So they could definitely see the purpose of doing this. And what it means for Coca-Cola or Pepsi is it's a few cents or a few shilling we're talking about that you can then bill to typically the consumer, because there is a cost associated with collecting the bottles, of course, and they do have to pay a fee into a PRO, etc. But if you crunch the numbers, it's a few shillings we're talking about. So the big players have seen this, that it's a game of volume, right? And that's why they agreed to do it.
Yeah. If just coming back to Mike's question, I was a little bit curious about this, the whole challenge of actually collecting these materials. How important do you see digitalization in that process?
In the collection itself?
Yeah.
Quite big, because that's happening at factory level. So if a waste picker comes in with 20 kg of plastic waste, for example, it's all different sorts of plastic, right? So the first things that happen at the recycling plant is to sort it into the different streams, waste streams, and also to take out what's hazardous, which is very difficult to reuse. And for that, you need some quite advanced scanners, but manually it's also done. But scanners are also becoming quite important, again, to handle volume. If we're talking about volume, we need to move beyond manual sorting of waste at these sites, right? So that's why those technologies that we have up north for sorting mechanisms with cameras, etc., are becoming quite key in the industry, because the business case for plastic recycling, if we just stay there, is not very good if you don't have volume. So all the recyclers in Kenya are right now struggling to get enough volume. So we're even seeing that they're importing waste from nearby countries. I mean, that's a typical reaction from when one economy becomes a front runner. And I think we'll see that continue over the next 5 years, that Kenya will be sucking up plastic waste, electronic waste from the nearby markets in the EAC region, simply to get enough volume in to drive this business case.
Okay. So I think we have a question from Vibeke. You want to ask that yourself?
I wish I could, but in a minute my electricity is gonna go off, so I will be off as well and have to look in to what's it called? Listen to the recording. But yes, I'm interested in Safaricom and why Safaricom is interested in waste collectors and working with them.
Yes, Safaricom is the player, of course, in Kenya within mobile transactions with the M-Pesa system. So there's both the element of business case they see, that they can be a player in handling all this data that goes into waste management. So they see a business case for sure. But the government has also approached them to say that the government, NEMA, the Environment Authority, think they are a natural player. And also the project that Mike was referring to before that we did together, we looked into feasibility studies around waste management within solid waste in Kenya. We had Safaricom as a natural part of an advisory board we had, right? Because it's just a big unavoidable player that you need they need to be part of what you do within waste management here.
Okay. If you look broadly across the kind of circular fields that you've worked with, where would you say the demand for technologies or the capabilities that Danish companies have? Are there any specific areas where you would say that the market potential is obvious?
I think it's design innovation. We really have an edge, and the technology itself, of course, but a lot of it is where it's difficult we see for East African players to engage with waste management is from the design perspective, right? So we see that a typical product is a water tank that can be remanufactured from plastic pellets, right? But there isn't a lot of new thinking from a design perspective going into the innovation or for remanufacturing a water tank, right? And if there's anything we're good at in Denmark from all business sectors is this design for disassembly, for example, and the design becomes part of the product story, right? The storytelling behind it. So we see quite a bigger demand for that when we expose East Africans to Danish companies, for example. And we know KEPRO, this Kenya Producer Responsibility Organization, in their mandate is very much also to become an innovation hub, because they know that's the same issue or demand they get from their members to say that, please help us on the design side. What should we be remanufacturing of products that could be of interest to the average consumer, where we don't drive up the price at the same time? So there's a huge innovation need and design need, where I think from Danish companies through the Plastics Federation, their member side, from El-Retour, the e-waste bureau, their members can play a part, because we've been doing this for quite some time, and the consumers have responded to it in Denmark, right? And then secondly, there is the pure technology part, of course, as well, that goes into this. That's in high demand, from sorting and to shredding and to melting and to cleaning the recycled material.
If you look at the different kind of industry players that are in the recycling, do they struggle on being profitable, or how does that play out?
We're now seeing a break-even point for some of the big plastic recyclers in Kenya, for example, because they have enough volume now and they have off-takers. So they've proven the business case. They don't need subsidies. That's also a thing we have to say, that is in these countries there are no subsidies or very little. Now KEPRO is able to offer small subsidies to recyclers, but that's by no means what can save their business model. It has to be done on pure market terms, but we now see the recyclers actually breaking even. Companies such as Vince Plastic, Taka Solutions, December Waste down here are breaking even and becoming profitable, because they now have big enough machines to sort and clean and remanufacture the materials, and they have off-takers or clients. Yeah, so that's why it's interesting now in this region that we're seeing a breaking point.
That's encouraging. Okay, Claus and everyone else, time is running out. But Claus, thank you so much for taking your time to share your insights. It is highly valuable to us. So thank you very much for that.
My pleasure, and you're welcome to share a presentation, of course, to the membership. And feel free to reach out. We're here in Nairobi, so just ping us, myself and my team, and we'll discuss. Okay, great. I think everyone should pick up that opportunity. Then let me just, before we end it all, do a little bit of advertising for our next Access to Innovation talk. That is on the 12th of August. Here we have Tue Nyby Andersen, who is the CEO and the co-founder of Kakula Capital. And he has a lot of experience in investing in companies. He's been involved in kind of developing the operational activities of many early stage companies. So that is on the 12th of August. That's it from our side. So thank you very much for joining, and good luck to all of you. Thank you.